Yes, let's talk about landscape speakers. This is one of my favorite categories simply because it's not technical at all. It's actually a lot of fun. You can be very, very creative. There are no rules, and as I say, it's not technical at all. So let's talk a little bit about landscape speakers. We've just recently introduced our brand new line, a 70 volt, 100 volt, and 8 ohm satellite subwoofer system for commercial and residential use. These satellites are the AW4LS, and the subwoofer is the AW10L sub. And we're going to talk about a few tricks and tips and talk about installation and best practices, things like that today. So let's get to it. Our new satellite subwoofer systems, you can transform any outdoor space into a great space. You know, all of the music that you've been used to listening to indoors, easily now you can have it right outdoors. And you don't have to have these big bulky speakers, you know, sticking out all over the place. We have those if you want them. But with our new satellite subwoofer system, these speakers become virtually invisible. They blend right in with the all of the landscape and provide incredible excuse me. I'm sorry. Oh wow, I lost audio there for a minute. Okay, we're back. Yeah, provide a bunch of incredible opportunities for being able to lay out these types of jobs very easily. So, sorry we had a little glitch there, but we're good to go now. I saw everything disappeared, but we're back. So, no need for large and unsightly speakers to clutter the view anymore. Our brand new speakers, elegant, scalable, provide high quality audio for any outdoor, residential, or commercial property. They're designed to withstand any type of weather out there, whatever elements you can throw at these things, whether it's extreme heat or extreme cold. These guys will operate anywhere from 15 below zero all the way up to 160 degrees Fahrenheit. So from the humid hot conditions of summertime in Florida to the bone chilling cold of a New Hampshire winter, bring it on. They can handle it. Let's have a look at this little layout right here. This kind of gives you an idea of how you lay out an outdoor zone. When you're going to lay out an outdoor zone, it's very, very easy. You have, for example, your X-Zone 70V, you're using at the head end, right? And whether you're doing this as an outdoor zone off of a MCA 88X system, or whether you're doing it as a commercial, just outdoor space. Very, very easy to lay these jobs out. All you have to do is from the head end, you're just running a single run of 16-2 stranded around the perimeter of whatever area you're looking to cover. Like in this example right here, we're looking at 6 satellites, 2 subwoofers. This is obviously a pretty good size area. Subwoofers are generally about 50 feet apart. About every 50 feet is where you want to put one. And these satellites, depending on what they're tapped at, you know, how many you're going to have out there, it's wide open because, like in this case, you're looking at a situation where they put a AW4 satellite at each end of the pool, and then they put some going into the common area, and then also have a couple over by the umbrellas and the where they have their lawn chairs and stuff like that. So this is a nice little layout right here. But, you know, you figure this is from this scale right here of about, you know, 6 satellite, 2 subwoofer. You figure with the X-Zone 70V being a 300 watt amplifier, even taking under consideration 20% headroom, you have 240 watts of nominal power, usable power. You figure with these satellites, if you tap these guys at 2 watts each, with 240 watts of usable power on an X-Zone 70, you could put 120 of these things out there. Think about that. So the scale of the system can be whatever you want it to be. There are no rules. In this type of a situation, what's really cool is that you can put a speaker wherever you want, and you don't have to worry about where am I going to put the other one. So I have, because of left right, like with normal 8-ohm stereo, every time you put in a speaker, you're thinking, where am I gonna put the other one? So I have proper imaging and a sweet spot and all of my impedance and all of that. And also when you're running multiple speakers like this in an outdoor zone doing 8-ohm, you're dealing with complex series parallel wiring, impedance matching, all kinds of stuff that make you rip your hair out. Well, with 70 volt, you just, wherever you want a speaker, that's fine. Put one there. You can, there's a whole bunch of different types of mounts. You can stake mount them. You can surface mount them. You can tree mount these things. All different types of applications. So wherever you want sound, all you got to do is put a speaker there and then tap it at the proper output for what you want for that particular area. So let's get into a little more detail here and show you how this all works. First, our AW4 satellites. These things are awesome, beautifully built. When you get these guys in your hands, you'll see we didn't cut any corners with these at all. Very, very high quality weatherized components, completely rust-proof grills, color molded shells, removable cap, that cap that you see on the back there, the weatherproof cap. Unscrew that cap, all of your tap dial, your tap settings are all in there. You have adjustable pivot angles. You have that 1/2-inch thread so you can screw this guy onto any, several different types of mounting devices I mentioned, whether it's a stake mount or a tree mount or a surface mount or what have you. This guy, there's all different types. It's a standard 1/2-inch, so almost any mounting bracket out there will work for it. As far as what the speaker actually is, it's a 4-inch weatherproof polypropylene cone with rubber surround, so completely water resistant. And then we also have a 3/4-inch marine grade tweeter in there. So these guys are built for the elements. Impedance, these guys will operate anywhere from a regular 8-ohm stereo system. So if you just want to hook these up to your regular 8-ohm stereo amplifier or receiver, go for it. Or you want to put them in a 70 volt, 100 volt type system for a constant voltage type system, then you have that option as well. Great frequency response, great power handling as well. Also, as I mentioned, with the 1/2-inch thread, several different mounting options that you can deal with. They're designed for maximum UV protection. The color goes all the way through. Rust-proof aluminum grills, color-molded composite construction. It won't chip, won't peel, fade, none of that stuff. You have 120-degree vertical direction adjustments, so you can really point this thing anywhere you want it to. You have an 11-inch stake, so nice solid stake mount, goes nice and deep into the ground. Waterproof wire nuts, all comes with it right in the box, and a 5-year warranty. These guys out in the field, if anything happens to a speaker, you just let us know. We're going to send you out another one. Then you go to the job site, swap it out for your customer, send us the bad one. Stake mount, tree mount, all of these options I was just talking about. Matter of fact, Philips, Hadco, they have different mounting accessories. They have a surface mount MC1A that you can mount on the eaves or on a fence or anywhere like that. Plus they have the TM1H tree mount, really cool way to mount these speakers in the tree. Gives you just different applications of whether you want to put these speakers high or low. As I mentioned in the beginning, you be as creative as you want with these types of systems because there are no rules. Wherever you think you might want a speaker, go ahead and put one there. You're going to have plenty of power to drive them, no matter how many speakers you want to put out there. Now, when you're going to set this guy up, first of all, you got to make sure that you determine where, your appropriate location and position. You got to make sure, that there's no buried utilities or water pipes, irrigation, gas lines, all that kind of stuff. Just make sure you're not near any of that stuff. I mean, this is a stake mount. You're just going to pound the stake in the ground. So later on, when we get talking about a subwoofer being buried in the ground, well, then I'm going to give you a phone number to call so that you can make sure that you're not going to run into any of this stuff. But with a stake mount, just go ahead and pound it in there. But use a rubber mallet because a regular steel hammer will damage that stake. So, and then you may not be able to screw the speaker on properly. Your seals won't be correct, it just makes a mess. So use a rubber mallet. That makes sure that, when you pound the steak in, you're not going to damage it. So you drive it into the ground, but leave it sticking up enough so that you can get at that wire opening. So you can pass your wire through there. And then you pass the speaker cable right through the top of that steak, let it exit right through that wire opening. Then you go ahead and drive it home. Okay, finish pounding it into the ground, but make sure when you get done, you're leaving just that half-inch threaded part above the ground. Just the top threaded section will be above ground level so that you can go ahead and mount your speaker after that. So then you just mount the speaker by putting it on there, turn it clockwise until it's nice and secure. Make sure it's facing the direction you want it. And then make sure that your speaker wire also can turn freely in there. Make sure that it's not a lot of tension on that particular wire so that it gets pulled out of the terminals. You don't want to have that happening out there. And then plus weather could get at it and stuff like that. And then you just go ahead and tighten that lock nut right against the steak, and that'll fix that speaker right in the correct orientation. Just make sure you lock it right in place right there. Then, once it's oriented into the proper direction, then you just need to adjust the angle. And to do that, all you got to do is loosen that hinge bolt that you see down in the lower right-hand corner right there. Very easy. Just loosen that guy up. Go ahead and twist that to the proper direction. Then go ahead and tighten the hinge bolt, and it'll lock that speaker right into that angle. We've also put a weep hole on this guy so that if you want to have this thing kind of pointed up, say you want to have it pointed in an upward direction, with a lot of landscape speakers, you got to be careful how much you tip it up because it'll actually start to, collect water in that right in the speaker itself. But we put a weep hole on there so that you have drainage, and so it allows you to be able to mount this guy at a steeper angle than a lot of our competitors, landscape models. You can do up to a 60-degree angle above the ground, and it'll still drain out really nicely. So no worries there. Now also there's a little hole there for it's a 5mm hole for a security wire. You use whatever you want for security wire depending on the location and what you think the threat is that this speaker might disappear. It's a deterrent at best. Okay, if someone wants to get the speaker, they're probably going to get it, but if you have this wire on there, at least it's a deterrent for commercial settings, outdoor seating areas, restaurants, hotels, pool and patio areas, stuff like that. Again, just a deterrent. Nice little security wire setup. Now we're talking about parallel wiring here across the board with 70 volt because everything is in mono, right? We're just running a single run of 16.2 or 18.2 or whatever around the perimeter of wherever this installation is going to be. So it's a single 2-conductor stranded wire that you're going to run to everywhere you want to have a speaker. And then wherever there's going to be a speaker, you just leave a little loop right there. A couple of feet usually works pretty good. And then leave a few additional loops here and there if you think that job is going to grow at all, or it's nice to be able to tell the homeowner or the business owner, hey, I thought about the future. If you ever want to add some more speakers or you want to grow this or whatever, we already have the wiring laying out there for you, so don't worry about it. We thought about the future. We thought about you, Mr. Customer. So, but you remember, this is very different than residential audio where you generally have, dedicated run, going from each speaker back to the amplifier, left side, right side. In stereo, this is just a single 2-conductor stranded wire running around the perimeter of the area where you want to do this install. And you can use thinner gauge wire. Let's have a look at that. I'll show you. Some of you have seen this chart before. This is very cool, but it really makes the point that let's go down that left-hand column right there. What I'm going to focus on here is 18 gauge. So let's shoot across to the right. You'll see that in an installation with 8 ohm speakers, 34 feet is about it, for 8 ohm stereo type application. 69 feet, 70 feet, whatever, that 1 dB loss, it generally doesn't hurt anything. But let's slide over a little bit more to the right, and with 70 volt, such as the AW4 and the AW10 subwoofer, I can take an 18 gauge wire and run 823 feet with only 0.5 dB loss. And if I don't care about 1 dB, which most people don't hear that anyway, I can go up to almost 1,700 feet with a single run of 18 gauge for 70 volt. So think about that. You don't have to worry about left and right and heavy gauge wiring and all of that kind of stuff. Single run, 16.2, right around the perimeter. So at each speaker location, all you're going to do is cut that loop of wire and strip it back, and then connect to the speaker terminals. Make sure that you observe polarity, because I mean we're running in mono, so we don't have left and right, but we still got to make sure that we're correct on positive, negative. Also make sure that there's no stray strands of wire sticking out, because you know what's going to happen, especially with constant voltage, is that it's going to continue. It's going to short the system, and it'll kick back to the amplifier and shut it down. So if you see any stray, strands sticking out, just give it a little haircut, put it back in there, make sure everything is hidden real nice. Again, you're outdoors, number one, so you want to keep it away from the weather. Number two, you want to make sure you keep it safe so that it doesn't create a problem with a thermal issue with your amplifier. And at the final speaker, the only wire connected is going to be the one coming from the previous speaker, right? That's it. Or from the amplifier if there's only one speaker in the system. And you could do that. You could take off of a system like this, run the wire out, run it to a single big speaker, for example, and tap that guy at 60 watts or whatever, and then add a subwoofer to it. And you can do a single speaker system like that and play way loud. Works very well. I've seen it before. Now, as far as location, you want to make sure that you bury that wire at least 6 inches, all right? Or check your local building codes, because that could vary. If you really want to be safe, just run in conduit, and then you know that it's going to be okay. And remember, systems with buried speaker cable, you got to make sure that you test all the wiring, test the speakers, test your volume levels, test everything to make sure it's correct before you start backfilling any trenches at all. Because once you bury it, it's there. So make sure everything is correct before you start backfilling any of these trenches for wiring and stuff like that. For covering the space, make sure you understand also that outdoor spaces require installation of multiple speakers to cover the space. When you have a large outdoor space, it's easy enough to think, geez, I could put like 4 speakers here in the 4 corners, cover this entire area, tap those guys at like 60 watts a piece. Yeah, 4 times 60, that's 240 watt load. We'll call that good, right? No. Think about it. The reason that this is laid out the way it is because you want to have a speaker everywhere that you want to have sound. As I mentioned before, with 240 watt nominal level on an amplifier like a X-Zone 70V, with these AW4s, if you tap them at 2 watts, you can put 120 of those guys into a space like this and still not exceed your nominal level of 240 watts. So think about that. So every place you think you might want sound, put a speaker there, and then you can always tap it for whatever output you want at that particular spot. So if I have a speaker, say, right near the barbecue pit there, I might tap that one down a little lower output, because people want to be able to talk while they're cooking and drinking beers, whatever. Then over by the swimming pool, I might want to tap those guys up a little higher, right? I might want to tap those at 16 watts or something so I have some more output. Because it's funny how that works, that when people jump in a swimming pool, they discover how loud they can talk, right? So I want to have music a little bit louder there. So again, multiple speakers cover the space. And remember, best to use more speakers at lower tap settings than fewer speakers at higher tap settings. It avoids the hot spots, gives you much more even coverage so that music, everything sounds the same no matter where you go throughout that entire space. You don't have hot spots and dead spots and another hot spot. So use as many speakers as you need to cover that area. And for stereo imaging to be effective, you got to be in a sweet spot, right? Generally, when you're talking 8 ohm stereo type installations, well, When you're in these outdoor locations, whether it's a backyard outdoor zone or whether it's a large commercial area, at a mall or something like that, then there is no sweet spot, right? There isn't one. Everybody's moving around. People are everywhere. So mono will provide much more even coverage in these spaces. So put the music where the people are. Put it everywhere, because that's generally where they're going to be in these kinds of spaces. Now, headroom. We talked about headroom on your amplifier, on your X-Zone 70V. A lot of people don't realize, these amplifiers, of course, are designed to operate on AC voltage, right? Well, amplifiers will produce DC voltage when they're pushed beyond the power supply's limit. It's called clipping, and it causes the amp to shut down, is what's going to happen. So, so you want to make sure that you always reserve 20% of your overall power for headroom. Again, for example, our X-Zone 70V is a 300 watt amplifier. If we want to save 20% of that for headroom, 20% of 300 is 60, right? So we want to save 60 watts. That leaves us 240 watts of usable power here. Okay, so what we want to make sure is that however many speakers we put in this system, when we set all our tap settings and then we add up all those numbers, we want to make sure it doesn't exceed 240. That's all. Simple. What that'll really do is that'll give you a safety zone. Really, reserve power or headroom, it's just a safety zone, allowing for these transient audio peaks to exceed the nominal levels, without clipping that amplifier. Once you start clipping, what happens is that the speaker actually creates a dead short, and it shoots that back at the amplifier and then shuts that amp down, right? Well, hopefully they're using a Russound amplifier, because if they are, when you remove that short, that amplifier will just come on and start playing again. We have very, very robust thermal protection in all of our amplifiers. But, sometimes you got to be very careful, because that amp could shut down at the wrong time. So you want to make sure that you test all this stuff. You want to make sure you have the proper headroom, make sure all your wiring is correct. Then you won't have to worry about clipping and shorts and things shutting down and stuff like that. Now, the way this all really works is the amplifiers use a step-up transformer to create constant voltage, 70 volt, 100 volt, right? Then they shoot that constant voltage down a single speaker wire. And then at the other end, the speakers use these step-down transformers to budget that constant voltage down to a usable level. And the tap settings allow the custom integrator to adjust that output at each speaker as well. So basically it takes that signal, it knocks it down to a usable level, and then allows you to attenuate just by simply clicking on whatever tap setting you want for the output level or volume level for that particular speaker. Now, with step-down transformers, you got to make sure that you set them, because before connecting wires, you want to unscrew that cap on the back of your AW4, and then you'll see that tap dial in there. Make sure that you set this into that 70 100 volt position. Okay, the 70 volt position is really what you're looking for, and so make sure that when you're running a 70 volt system that you have this guy set at 70 volts, and then you want to put it in the 8 ohm position if you're going to be wiring these guys up to a regular stereo amplifier or stereo receiver or low impedance devices. Then you'd set it to the regular 8 ohm setting, which is like a bypass, okay? But otherwise, you would select a tap setting in the 70 volt side. Now, check this out. When you're laying out these types of jobs, don't worry about putting too many speakers or even thinking about that. Again, with the conventional 8 ohm residential type installations, there are so many limitations. I can only drive so many pair, and I have to put them in places where I have imaging and things along those lines. All those restrictions are gone. When you walk a job for a 70 volt outdoor system like this, wherever you want a speaker, you just point. I want one right there. I want one right there. I think there should be one right there. I think there should be another one there, there. And as many as you want. Walk that job. Lay them out. When you get done, count them up. Because again, look at this. If I tap those satellites at 2 watts a pop, I can put up to 120 of those things into this area that I'm working on. And even 4 watt, which is about where you really want to tap them, between 2 and 4 watts for background, I can still run 60 speakers, okay? And then if I have occasionally, I want to have 1 or 2 that I might want to tap a little higher so they play a little louder, like I mentioned by the pool. Why does everybody really yell at the pool? I don't understand. Everybody discovers that their voice is very, very loud. So you usually got to have music pretty loud. That's where you're going to go 16 watt, maybe even 32, depending on the amount of speakers in the system. But once you add up all of your tap settings for all of your speakers, just make sure it doesn't exceed the nominal level. Now, with the AW10 sub, let's have a look at this guy. Great, deep, smooth bass for any outdoor system. It's designed to enhance bass in any system, whether it's a regular 8-ohm stereo system that you already have installed and the customer said, geez, I wish I had more bass. Hey, talk to them about one of these, and you can add it right on. No worries. In a 70-volt system, it wires in parallel right in with the satellites. So again, you can add bass to any system. It's designed to be paired with the AW4s, but you can add it with any outdoor system. And these guys are built to last. We didn't cut any corners whatsoever. When you pull one of these guys out of the box, you can tell right away this is a very, very high quality piece of gear right here. And it's built to last in the long haul. So nothing but the best components for reliability and durability. Now, when these are installed, they disappear right into the scenery. They're completely hidden from sight because they get buried, right? The only thing above ground is that small canopy. And it looks like outdoor vents that you see here and there in a lot of commercial properties, residential properties. But it blends right in. It's paintable. So if you look down in this image we're looking at right here, if you look hard enough, you'll probably see, I see 1, 2, 3, I see 6 satellites and 2 subwoofers in there. It's like, where's Waldo, huh? There's probably more around, but it just shows that in a situation like this, you can set these guys up beautifully and you hardly even notice that they're there. Now, this guy is built out of rigid PVC. It's a tune ported tube. It has the canopy going to stick about 6 to 8 inches above the surface of the ground. That's all you're going to see. And that dome, that canopy is paintable. Full bandpass design, okay, with this guy as well. So anything from 30 hertz to 200 hertz, you're all set. And then it's got that flexible silicone elbow. Make sure when you put this guy together, we're going to walk through this a little bit, but make sure when you put it together that everything is really sealed, weather tight. But what is it? What is the AW10? What the heck is it? Well, it's a full bandpass subwoofer. It's a 10-inch woof inside that enclosure, polypropylene woofer with a rubber surround, so nothing's going to happen to that speaker. Once again, 8-ohm or constant voltage, 70, 100-volt operation. Frequency response is great, 30 hertz to 200 hertz. Now, let's talk about that for just a minute. Your mileage may vary, okay? If you're going to be using it in a stereo system, 8-ohm stereo, low impedance type system, excuse me. Well, in that type of a system, it'll play down to 30 hertz. When you're going to use it in a 70-volt system, well, think about this. The X-Zone 70V, just like any quality commercial type amplifier, will have a high pass filter on it, because what they want to do is they want to block that low bass from running out in these types of systems in these great distances. At Russound, we chose in the X-Zone 70V to use a 70 hertz high pass filter in our X-Zone 70V. So what it does is it blocks all frequencies below 70 hertz from going out on this single 16 2-stranded wire. So when you're in a 70-volt system or 100-volt system, the frequency response specs will be 70 to 200. When you run it in the 8 ohm mode, 30 to 200. Okay, I could hear that question coming, so I just want to make sure. Now, sound pressure, 90 dB. This guy's extremely efficient, so it doesn't take hardly any power to run it either. So we did it up. We did it right. And when you're choosing a location, you got to remember this guy's designed to cover about 2,000 square feet, right? It's about what it's designed to cover. And sound will carry in all directions because bass is omnidirectional. Bass will find you. It's like if a car is driving by and they're playing their music loud, what do you hear? Or if there's somebody down the hall playing music behind a closed door, they're playing it loud, what do you hear? You hear the bass, right? 20 hertz bass tone will travel 59 feet, no matter what. It'll go through walls. It'll go through anything. It'll travel 59 feet. Highs, not quite so much. So that's why you're not going to hear those. But bass will carry. So remember, that's why you only need a couple of subwoofers even when you have a ton of satellites. You want to make sure that you have about 50 feet between subwoofers. That'll ensure that you have the proper spacing. And you want to make sure that you locate these guys near the primary outdoor listening areas, around the outer edges, around the perimeter, but make sure it's not right up against a home or a building, something like that. Because now you're creating some resonant vibration is what you're doing when that type of a situation. If you put it too close to a wall or a corner, all of a sudden it begins to resonate and it begins to get very boomy, okay? And now you have transmission into places that you really didn't want it to go. Let's have a little closer look. You want to make sure you avoid placing it near walls or foundations. Placing it near a wall will increase the bass by about 3 dB. Putting it in a corner will increase it by another 3 dB. It's like in a home system, in your living room. If you took the subwoofer and you stick it right in a corner, that bass goes up by about 3 dB, and it begins to get very boomy, very muddy sometimes, and makes you need to turn it down. But you pull that guy out away from the corner or out away from the wall, all of a sudden it smooths right out, begins to get more punchy, okay? Well, same thing in an outdoor zone. And if that happens, then at loud volumes, you could induce unwanted vibrations and sound transmissions into homes and adjacent buildings. So, and you also have to take into consideration the ease of the location, where you're going to run your wires to. So these are some things you really need to think about when you're choosing a location. Make sure you got plenty of room around it. Make sure that, there's nothing underground that you're going to dig into. And keep it out of corners and away from buildings, unless you want to do that. Some people might do that by design. I've gone into people's homes where they purposely put that subwoofer in a corner. And they point it right into the corner because they want it to boom. So, again, there are no rules. Get creative as you want. This guy's made a premium materials, for rugged outdoor use. But you got to remember, let's keep it near bushes. Let's put it near shrubs, and or rock decorations and stuff like that. Things that will protect it from maintenance equipment. Things like weed whackers, okay? It can take some hits, but if you're constant pounding on these, eventually they'll start to break down and become damaged. So make sure you place them in places where the lawn guys won't beat the crap out of them. Make sure that you have proper drainage. You don't want to put this in a low-lying area where water will pool and get up to the top level of that canopy, and then water run right down inside that tube. Now you got problems, right? So you want to make sure also where you're digging your hole is free of any obstructions and underground utilities. You don't want to start digging that guy's backyard and go and hit that gas line, would you? I don't think so. Now, preparing the hole, you got to make sure it requires a size of approximately 15 inches wide by 30 inches long by about 18 inches deep, okay? So you want to make sure that canopy is 6 to 8 inches above the surface. You want to make sure down in the bottom of the hole you have about 2 inches of gravel or pea stone so that you have some drainage there. So this thing isn't just sitting in mud, all right? So keep that in mind. and it's parallel wiring, so you're using the same wiring that you ran for your satellites. You're just wiring these guys right in parallel, right along with your satellites, right? And so at each woofer location, just cut the loop and strip it back, and then put the woofer in just like you would one of the satellites. It goes right in line, same way. So now we have our location all set. We have our hole dug, all that kind of stuff. We're good to go. Let's pull this guy out of the box and put it together so that we can get it put in the ground, right? This is what you're going to find in the box. Your clamps, the port body, right? Subwoofer body. And then you have a small end and a large end and a port tube. And then you have the silicone elbow. And then your underground enclosure and your canopy. So there's not a whole lot to it, but this is what you'll see when you pull this guy out of the box. Now, when you unpack these contents from the box, just make sure that you're careful when you're lifting that subwoofer up out of the box. There's a carrying support rope that comes right in the box. Just pull those guys, pull it up by the ropes, and that'll pull everything right out for you all in one fell swoop. Examine the silicone elbow. Make sure you get familiar with this, because you're going to see that one end is slightly larger than the other. It's not a lot, so you got to look at it for a minute. And the smaller end attaches right to the subwoofer body, and then the larger end is where you put that port tube in. So make sure you get that right, because if it's reversed, it may not seal properly, and now we have problems, right? And then you put a stainless steel clamp ring on each of those silicone where they connected to the body of the woofer and to the port tube. And make sure you understand there's also two different size clamp rings. Just like you have a small and a big end on the elbow, you have a small and a big clamp ring. One for the large end, one for the small end. So you attach the small end to the subwoofer body as shown. Now, before tightening up the clamp, make sure that the orientation is exactly what you want it to be, okay? And make sure you understand that that wire comes out that near edge of the rear panel. So you want to make sure you can get at that once it's sitting in the hole. Then you rotate that elbow. So speaker wire and tap setting are best suited for your install. You got to be able to get at those, right? So you get everything set in that hole just the way that you want it to be. And then once the orientation is set, now you can tighten those clamp rings, okay? Make a good seal. It's important. Prevent water from coming into this guy. It can create issues with the subwoofer as time goes by if this guy fills up with water. Then you attach the canopy at that larger end. Make sure you fully seat that guy. Make sure you set the proper angle at 90 degrees. And then fully tighten those clamps as well. Once again, make sure it's fully sealed. This guy, a couple of things. It's not only from water getting into it, but also from performance. Anytime you have a woofer that has a leak in the enclosure, they whistle. Every time you get a bass note, that thing whistles. And so it really, you can create some very, very strange sounds with a subwoofer if the box is not properly sealed. Now, a lot of people want to paint the canopy. You may want to just leave it as it is. It kind of disappears in there. But, you know, I've seen where people paint them green or what have you. But this would be the time to paint it, you know, now that you have it all put together before it goes into the ground. Make sure that you're very, very careful when you're painting this guy, because there is on the underside of the canopy, there's a mesh that's designed for, it's an insect and rodent guard, and you don't want to clog that guy, okay? So make sure you mask that part off when you're painting it, and then you'll have better performance. If you clog that all up, again, your output will be diminished. Now, once you get that all done, you're ready to go in the ground, right? Let's adjust those settings. We want to make sure before we connect any wires that we have that set on the 70-volt position, okay? And then we want to connect check our connection at the amplifier too. Go back, double check that. Make sure you grab the 70-volt leg and a ground from your X-Zone 70V, and then you're going to be good to go. So, and then if you're going to be using it again in a low impedance situation, low impedance amplifiers, receivers, put it in the 8 ohm position for your conventional residential type system. Now for tap settings in the 70 volt range, you have a pretty good assortment here to choose from. 8 watt, 16 watt, 32 watt, 64 watt, 128 watt. And you'll have a frequency response of 70 to 200. In the 100 volt, it's 16, 32, 64. 100 volt is used in Europe primarily, but also same thing, 70 to 200. And then in 8 ohm bypass mode, you'll have a single setting, and that's where you'll get your lowest bass, your lowest best performance, because again, conventional stereo amplifiers are generally high current amplifiers, much better for producing low bass. So we're going to be looking more at that 70 volt list right there. So let's finish up the installation here. You make your wiring connections, use the included weatherproof wire nuts. Make sure you use those. And then when it's all ready, turn the amplifiers on. Okay, time to do some testing. You're going to lower that subwoofer into the hole. Make sure you have 1 to 2 inches of pea gravel or pea stone or gravel, what have you, so that you have that drainage, right? And then when you put it in the hole, make sure it's level, because if it's not, you go and fill in that hole. Now when you eyeball that thing, it's going to be crooked. And if it's someone like me, that's not going to happen in my yard. That would drive me insane. I would dig it up as soon as you leave and straighten it out. So make sure you level that thing so that when you fill it in, that canopy is nice and flush and level to the ground. Not flush, but level, excuse me. And then before backfilling any of this stuff, verify all your system operation. Remember, we just turned your amplifiers on. So let's set the proper volume level. Let's make sure all the tap settings are right. Let's make sure, the tap setting for 70 volt is set correctly. And then the tap setting for our desired output, whether it's 2 watt or 4 watt or 6, what have you, what we want to set for output level for tap setting. So make sure you set them both, 70 volt and where you're going to be. Now, when all of that is verified and the tap settings are all adjusted, now you can put that cover back on, and now you can put the subwoofer in the hole. I mean, you can go and bury it now. And when you're going to bury it, what you want to do is you want to make sure that you don't just throw a bunch of dirt in there and then walk away. What you want to do is throw some dirt in there, pack it down, making sure that the subwoofer sits in one spot, okay? Make sure that it's sitting right there. Make sure it doesn't rotate out of position when you're filling the hole. So pack the dirt even as you go, all right? A little more dirt, pack it down. A little more dirt, pack it down. When you get all done, that canopy should be about 6 to 8 inches above ground level, just like you're seeing right here, okay? That's kind of what it should look like when you're all done. Just like that, and from the end, so you can get at your tap settings and your wiring and all that kind of stuff as well. So let's wrap this up. Let's show you how easy it is to do one of these guys. Let's do a nice 14 speaker zone outdoors, okay? We have our X-Zone 70V 300 watt amplifier. Let's do 12 AW4 satellites and 2 subwoofers, all right? And we're going to tap all of them at 16 watts each. I like it to play pretty loud, so I'm going to tap everything at 16 watts. 14 speakers times 16 watts each is a 224 watt load. Look at that. Look what we've done. So we have 76 watts of headroom or reserve power. Our recommended is 20% is 60 watts. So I actually have extra reserve power, extra headroom. I could grow this system a little bit if I wanted to. As you can see, I have an extra 16 watts. If I wanted to add 8 more satellites and tap them at 2 watts apiece, I could do that. Think about that. So leaving even just a little bit of reserve power doesn't mean that you're limited on the speakers. You could still do quite a few. 70 volt outdoor systems are very, very easy to design, very easy to calculate, very easy to wire, and very easy to install without all the common restrictions that you have with conventional 8 ohm stereo installations. I want to thank you for joining me. My name is Dan. If you have any questions, feel free, shoot me an email, danc@russound.com. Dan, D-A-N-C, @russound.com. So enjoy the rest of your day. Enjoy your customers, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you.